no better place to check in with Paul Finebaum, presented by Allstate, than where Paul just came back from SEC Nation. His show was out at the Swamp for the big one between Miami and Florida. So, Paul, I want to check in with the Florida Gators to start the season. Now, here's what I'll say. We came into the season knowing Florida had the toughest schedule in the country. What we didn't anticipate was after an entire offseason, months to get ready, and the atmosphere at the Swamp yesterday, for that to happen to the Gators against Miami.
Yeah, I usually like to get right to the point, but I want to just take us up to the kickoff yesterday, because being in Gainesville, Matt, on Friday, positivity, talking to students, we're not happy with the record, but we're behind Billy Napier. Then the zenith of the afternoon came about 4 o'clock when I sat down with Scott Strickland, who hired, of course, Billy Napier, and made the decision to fire Dan Mullen. And he was all in. He said, you can't make changes every 3 years. So we're in this thing for the long haul. We believe in Billy Napier. He's done things correctly. He's done things methodically. And we believe that Billy Napier will be here for a very long time. And I thought about that as the afternoon wore on, as the seats were emptying yesterday. And Matt, it just felt like the one thing that Billy Napier couldn't afford to do, he did. The credibility that he gained in the offseason, the goodwill, Tim Tebow telling me Friday afternoon, Saturday morning, that Billy Napier probably should be coach of the year with a 7 or 8 win season. It just seemed like it all went down the drain at the Swamp. And the question now is, can he put back the shattered pieces? Because at this point, every single week is going to be a referendum on Billy Napier's future, and that is for those who have not already written it off.
Yeah, to drain the swamp, pun intended there, with what happened yesterday. And Paul, that's a great point. Again, we've detailed Florida coming into this season, year 3 of Billy Napier, and the schedule that he has in front of him. I sit with a former Florida coach, Dan Mullen, every week. He knows the program as good as anyone, even going back to his days with Urban Meyer's offensive coordinator. And here, Dan Mullen coming into Saturday, when we were talking about it off air, and even I was talking at Galloway, there was legit belief, Paul, that not only would Florida come in and keep this game close and make it a fun watch, Mullen actually thought, because of the Swamp and an offseason to prepare, that Florida could beat Miami, not lose 41-17. There was belief that Florida could win this game.
Yeah, and listen, I realize when you go to Florida, that gives you a little more juice. But Chris Doering, who is a commentator, as you know, he was on our show Friday afternoon. He said Florida will not only win, but they will blow Florida out. I mean, it's one thing for Tim Tebow to get up in front of a couple thousand people and Gators win. Well, I mean, I live through that every week. So do you see it as well. But I mean, this was a legitimate analyst, not just saying my school is going to win. They're going to destroy that. That's how much optimism was going on. And, I know what people are saying today, and I'm trying to be rational and reasonable, which is not easy for me to do in the aftermath of really one of the worst beatdowns I've seen for a respected team at home in a setting like that. I mean, this wasn't a 6 or 8 touchdown differential.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, this was a very narrow, 1 or 2 3-point line. I mean, this was a game.
Yeah, and when it either lends credence to those who are big on Miami coming into the season, saying Cam Ward's going to be the difference, the U's back, we're going to go to a college football playoff, give them credit, because it would have been easy for them to get trapped in the Swamp yesterday and maybe get upset. But I did not expect that. And to your point, Samford's next, and then Texas A&M, Mississippi State, UCF. There was a little bit of a lull. But, Paul, you did. Now, if you're Billy Napier, you did not want that to be how you started the season.
No, because I mean the math and most people are familiar with the schedule. I mean, there was only about 6 or 7 legitimate win possibilities anyway, and Miami was one of those. And now you every game now. I mean, forgetting Samford, that's the only sure win of the season. I mean, you have A&M coming in, Matt. I mean, we all saw the game Saturday night. They're a good team. They're not great, but they played with a really good team yesterday. And then you go to Mississippi State. I have no earthly idea, but you're on the road. And then here's the game that I think could really be devastating if he loses at home against UCF. I mean, they're a good team.
Yeah.
I mean, they're certainly capable of winning that game, and that's before you go to Tennessee and before you deal with Kentucky and then the gauntlet of Texas, Georgia, Ole Miss, Florida State, that endless stream of games which they really have no chance of winning.
Yeah, and look, you never want to start a season, and we do this now as we continue to check in with Paul Finebaum. We do this every year where we always ID a coach or two that could potentially be in the hot seat. It's just the way of the world in college football.
Yeah.
But what you don't want is you work all off season, as you said, to build up goodwill. And here we are in week one. And now all of the attention is going to be on how do you get out of this? Are you starting DJ Lagway, the all everything true freshman? Is the Graham Mertz era done? Now we're picking and choosing and questioning everything going on in Gainesville, when really we should be looking at the big picture of how you're continuing to build this program. Because, Paul, as we both know, we talk about this all the time. Building a program doesn't happen overnight. Now it could and should with the transfer portal era, but I just don't know how much closer they are today than they were on day one.
Well, again, we may look back 4 months from now and go about Miami playing in the quarterfinals of the semi. I mean, we sometimes you don't know what you're looking at the moment, but here it doesn't really change Florida's path. The goodwill gone, the momentum gone. The one thing Billy Napier has, based on everyone with whom I spoke, is DJ Lagway. If he is this superstar, and if Napier can grab a hold of him and ride through some turmoil and get to at least, I mean, what's a respectable record? 500 right now?
Yeah.
Maybe that there's a silver lining. And then you have a situation, you have an interim president there who's the former president, who greeted Napier on the field. I have no idea why he waited around to greet Napier. I wouldn't have gotten near the guy, but he figures he might as well. He's standing down there, and he will ultimately make that decision. And then, where does Scott Strickland fit into this? A respected AD, but a guy who's on the clock now. And so you have all these circumstances. I mean, I forgot LSU is also on that schedule. I mean, they got playoff teams every week, with one or two exceptions. I mean, losing to I think A&M now becomes like the de facto season for him, because if you start off losing 2 games you were supposed to win, and 6-6 or 7-5 was predicated on maybe only losing 1 game in the first half to Tennessee on the road, which they will, then I mean it becomes desperate very quickly. The negativity cannot be stopped. And that's why I think it's so important to point out goodwill gone, positivity gone. And now every time Billy Napier stands in front of a microphone, as he did yesterday, it's on me. Well, you better believe it's on you. You are now the #1 coach in college football on the hot seat. And we're only hours into the month of September.
Yeah, I haven't even gotten to finish my Sunday morning coffee after a long Saturday on Labor Day weekend before we get started with this. Also gone, the check-in, as we check in with Paul Finebaum, presented by Allstate. Some other things I want to get to, Paul, because I have best laid plans, and now we're in coaching conversation, so it's kind of the natural segue. For the first time in 17 years, someone other than Nick Saban on the sidelines in Tuscaloosa, and Kalen DeBoer. We know Jim Harbaugh went off to the NFL, leaving Sharon Moore with bits and pieces of a Michigan team that shouldn't be ranked 9th in the country. They lost too much. It's no disrespect to Michigan. You won the national championship. Enjoy it. You're not the 9th best team in the country. They struggle with Fresno State, pulled away late. For your money, the debuts yesterday starting in Tuscaloosa with Kalen DeBoer. From where I sat, I mean, it looked pretty effective. There was some sloppiness, but I've said it before and I'll say it again. DeBoer was a home run for Alabama because he's an offensive guy that gets with a quarterback and some really talented freshman receivers that could use his acumen.
It was a pretty flawless beginning. And I mean, if you're watching it down by down, you're seeing things in the first half you don't like. And you're also, if you cover college football like we do, first game against Western Kentucky, and it doesn't make any difference. It's just a process. The fact Nick Saban was there may have been the biggest surprise to me. I mean, I kind of like figured Saban would show up when he had to, but he and Miss Terry. I mean,
Maybe go bar hopping with McAfee or something.
I guess. I mean, I guess maybe he was just glad to get away from McAfee. But he, but the game pretty meaningless other than the fact that it's the first game. But I remember 17 years ago, I stood there. I was there till midnight against Western Carolina. I mean these are moments in time, Matt, when you cover college football that you make note of, and we won't ever mention this game again.
Yeah, and the thing I do make note of is that there was actually delayed 6 minutes because of headset communication issues with Western Kentucky. So DeBoer had to wait a little longer to get his Alabama career started. And I like what Sharon Moore did last year as Michigan's interim when Jim Harbaugh kept getting in trouble. I think that he's going to have a hard time getting Michigan at the sustained level of success that Harbaugh did. He was left in a very precarious situation with all of the NCAA violations hanging around. The cupboard was not bare, but it was taken to the NFL. For me, this one's going to be a much tougher transition as a new head coach at Michigan.
Yeah, and the one thing you would rather not have is the eyes of the nation on you week 2 into the season, but that's exactly what he has.
Yeah.
With the Texas game. I mean, everybody will be there. There's not that much else going on this weekend, I don't think. So all the trailer shows will show up, all the attention at noon, and it's conversely, it's a great chance to say, okay, we're back. I mean, we're not back, but it's a continuum.
Sure.
But certainly the odds don't favor that.